Hi everyone, welcome to Theology 360. My name is Julie Van Cat. I've been an adjunct professor with the College of St. Mary's for the past 5 or 6 years, and most of that time I have been teaching this class. I also teach another class that's called Theology 103, Intro to Christianity, and that's also online. I believe some of you have been in that class. A little bit more about me. I've been teaching theology for the past 24 years, mostly at the high school level. But as I said, about 6 years ago, I started teaching at College of St. Mary's. And about 3 years ago, I started teaching at Creighton University. So I teach at lots of different places. Most of my time is spent at Mercy High School. So I'm used to the all-girls environment. I'm also a native of Omaha. I've lived here most of my life. And I'm married to my husband, Dan. We've been married for 24 years. And we have 5 kids. Our oldest is 23, our youngest is 11, and we have 4 daughters and then finally a son. And so that's just a little bit about me. The best way to get a hold of me is by emailing me. On the syllabus there's a Mercy High email address that will get to me the quickest, so please use that email address if you can. First I want to kind of cover some information about the class itself and then some about week 1 of the class. So first of all, everyone needs these 2 textbooks. This one might look a little different. The copy that you got is probably different, but it's called Women in the New Testament. The other one is called Her Story. We're starting the course with this book, Women in the New Testament, which will cover information about the Bible. So it's mostly about the New Testament, obviously, by its title. But I did want to just talk about a few issues with you. So the very first thing that I have on the syllabus for you to do is look at a PowerPoint about Old Testament women. I think it's important to just make sure you have at least some knowledge of these women. And so there are slides about them. There is not a reading assignment per se, but anytime you're not familiar with the story, if you can look at the Bible passages that coincide with the slides, that will help you understand the story better. A little bit about the Bible. The Bible is organized by genre. It's not organized chronologically. So the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, was not the first book written. And so just keep that in mind. Also consider the Bible kind of like walking into the library where there's all sorts of different books by different authors and they're kind of organized by genre. And they together kind of give you a complete perspective, but individually they don't tell the whole story. This book, Women in the New Testament, is organized chronologically and not in the same order that the biblical books can be found. So the first chapter you'll read about when you get to chapter 3 will be about the Pauline letters. Chapter 2 is just giving you kind of a foundation and a background, and chapter 1 is an intro, okay? So sometimes when we talk about Bible passages, we talk about them being prescriptive or descriptive. Okay, so this is an important kind of difference for you to understand. If a passage is descriptive, it's just describing how things were at the time of the biblical story. If something is prescriptive, that means it's prescribing how things should be. And so as theologians, we're always trying to determine if something is simply descriptive, simply describing the way things were, or if it's really intended to be something that we should adhere to today. And this is in particular important when it comes to women because there are several passages that talk about women being silent in church and covering their hair and things like that. And if they are descriptive, then obviously they're just telling us how they were, how things were. But if it's prescriptive, as some people interpret it to be, then that would mean we as women shouldn't talk in church and don't have a voice. And of course that's not how I would see those passages, but some people in some specific religions do see it that way. So when you're reading about these passages or reading the passages themselves, keep in mind that it could be descriptive and it could be prescriptive. There is a slide in that first PowerPoint about themes in the Old Testament dealing with women. And so I would just invite you to kind of think about how the stories that you read about kind of apply to those themes. As far as the class goes itself, you will take a quiz or a test at the end of each week. This is a 6-week course, so this would be you learning everything you would learn in 16 weeks in a normal semester in 6 short weeks. So you will have a quiz or a test at the end of each week. You will participate most weeks in 2 discussions. When you do this, you need to post a response to the discussion question and then respond to at least one other person's post within the next 24 hours, usually. Sometimes it's slightly different in the syllabus. I will grade you on the entire conversation, so the original post is 10 points, your response is 5 points, but it goes in together in the grade book as 15 points. That's for each discussion, and there are 10 discussions. You will also write 2 papers. The first paper is a research paper, and that paper is due next week. So look at the syllabus for the specific date and time, but that paper is due next week. This has to be a 4 to 6 page paper. The cover page, if you put a title page, that does not count in the total number of pages. And you do need to consult at least 4 outside sources, and this is a formal paper, so please do not use personal pronouns. You should have an intro, a body, and a conclusion, and there are details about kind of what I expect in a paper in the end of the syllabus. The topic for the research paper has to do with the Virgin Mary. So you need to research a Marian topic. And I have this broken down in the syllabus as you could research a Marian apparition. These are the times Mary has appeared to people throughout time. You could research a Marian devotion like the Rosary or a novena. Or you could research a Marian doctrine, meaning a teaching that we have about the Virgin Mary. Again, this is due next week, 4 to 6 pages, 4 outside sources. You can use APA or MLA or Chicago Turabian, any 3 of those types of styles, but again, it should have an intro, a body, and a conclusion. You'll write a second paper. This second paper is a reaction paper. Before you write it, you will first watch a movie or a film about an important woman in the church, and then simply react to that. In that paper, it's less formal. You can use personal pronouns, and you don't have to cite outside sources, but if you do cite the movie, for example, quote the movie, then you should have a works cited page for that too. You will also do a presentation at the end of the semester, and that presentation you'll have to videotape yourself giving, and you'll upload it to YouTube and then send the link. So maybe practice that a little bit if you've never done that before. And the topic for that is an issue that faces women today and what would be a Christian response to that today. And I will go into more detail about that presentation in the second paper at a later point in time. As far as what you're going to be reading about this week, again, you're going to review about Old Testament women. Then you're going to read chapter 2, which gives you some history to the different types of women, like Jewish women versus Greek or Hellenistic women, and how they were different, how they were treated different, what kind of rights they had in the family and the society, and that helps you understand, just women in general at the time. Chapter 3 is about St. Paul's letters, the genuine letters. It focuses more on the ones we think St. Paul actually wrote. And in that chapter, you'll read about some specific women and how they obviously had leadership roles in the early church and how they were treated. In chapter 4, you're going to read about Mark and John's Gospels. Mark was the first written, John's was the last written. Luke's Gospel is a whole separate chapter. The book doesn't really go into much information about Matthew's Gospel. Mark was the source, the main source for Matthew's Gospel, and it doesn't focus as much on women. So you'll read about stories in the Gospels that deal with women and the treatment of those women, and you'll also read about just the different leadership positions they may have had that are inferred in these Gospels. Again, by Friday you'll take a quiz. If you have any questions, again, email me at the Mercy High email address. I'm really looking forward to this summer semester with you, and please keep the lines of communication open. What I've found with the online class is that as much as I think I've been clear in the syllabus and in the descriptions of your homework, a lot of times people don't fully understand or do have questions. So just email me those questions. And God bless, and I'll talk to you next week.